Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, we do have a sequel from GoldShell. This is the next Alephium ASIC. This is going to be their AL Box 2. So we do have the full specs. We don't have price points or the release window yet, but basing it off the specs, current profitability of the AL1, kind of what things are looking like, we can kind of make predictions as to where the price point may be, where a good price could be, and potential outlooks of this thing, right? So we're gonna see how it stacks up, see if this thing could be a potential buy, right? So if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get to this thing. So they actually gave us the hint yesterday. They released a little poll yesterday, basing it off of asking something to the extent of, when the next AL miner comes out, what do you want more, efficiency or hash rate? And the very next day, they gave us the specs of this guy. So this is the AL Box 2, and it's 720 gigahash, 360 watts. So they're repeating the same exact formula, right? They essentially just either added another hash board or just doubled the amount of chips. No efficiency gain. Again, they're just doubling the amount of chips in this little box, okay? Which we knew was coming because, again, in this form factor, all the other Box 2s are what? In that 350, 400 watt range, right? So seeing how that one was that small in the wattage area, we knew that this guy was going to be inevitable. And don't be surprised to see the AL Box 2 Pro or 3, because now we just saw with the KA Box Pro that they're going to do 600 watt versions in these little boxes as well. So depending on the amount of chips, if they're able to fit it, don't be surprised to see that thing again in a few months. Because again, the AL Box 1 just came out 3 months ago. Okay, so keep these things into mind. So, basic outlook. Current price, we'll just speculate on what we think the price may be. Currently on GoldShell site, $45.50 for the AL box. So easy math, 9K, discount for being a bulk unit, 8K, okay? Realistically, good price. Right off the rip, no, right? Because they're still not in line with current like market prices, which this thing has been dropping like a freaking rock. And shout out to, I forget who I was talking with in the comments, and that was kind of what I was predicting, just because of how aggressive this has been dropping and how aggressive also that K Box Pro has been dropping. I was kind of speculating that it seems like this is not just normal drops, that it's drops because another miner's coming out, and here we are just like literally the next day. So this guy, again, for the past like month, it's been constant like 100, 200 bucks a day drops. Okay, it's currently down to 3,600 bucks. So basing it off of the street price, multiplying that by 2, 7,200, 69.99, bulk discount, 59.99. Okay, so realistically, I would guess 7,000, right? Basing it off of this, potentially a little bit more, but that's most likely where the price is going to lie. Now, is that a good price? It's gonna be up to you, but for me, we'll talk about it, okay? So the biggest threat here is, number one, you can't just go on like Mine the ASIC and say, okay, you know, this thing is making 11 bucks a day or 22 bucks a day, because it's doubling the AL box here, which is 11.45, so let's say 23 bucks a day. Not really going to be that simple, just because, again, the biggest factor with these hype basics, just like we saw with Caspa, because again, it's going to be a repeat of what we saw with Caspa. So we have a lot of lessons that we learned with Caspa gonna apply here as well. Okay, so the name of the game early on is the hash rate is going to increase massively. Okay, it's going to be constant, like doubling of the hash rates early on, just because it's such a new network, and that's especially going to happen once we get the bigger beast coming on. Okay, so the biggest threat here is the increase in hash rate, which we've already seen pretty massively. Okay, for any of you guys who remember, the AL box video we did right when it was announced was back on April 6th, and at the time here, you can kind of see here, the current yield today was 44 ALF. Okay, and at the time also, ALF was nearing 3 bucks. It's currently down to $1. So it was a double whammy, right? So the hash rate went up 4x, meaning your yield is down to a fourth of what it was back then. So again, 44 to 11. And then the price went from $3 an ALF to $1 an ALF. So two really big, massive hits. Okay, so went from 120-ish a day at launch to 11 bucks a day currently for this guy. Obviously, the new one's going to be double, so it'll be 22, 23. Okay, which is why in this video we focus so heavily on it not being a good price point anywhere near there, right? And this was before the 15K MSRP fiasco, right? We're basing it off of the 8, 9K. Okay, so hopefully you guys kind of see like what we're talking about there, because a lot of the things did kind of end up happening. Okay, so to me, the biggest threat is the bigger, better miner, which we know is essentially inevitable, and that's going to greatly increase the hash rate. Okay, it's more so than what it already is. It's going to continue to increase with these guys and this new one, but the biggest threat is once one of those guys come on, it's going to devastate things and your yield is going to be fractions. Okay, just like what we saw with the KS0, right? That first one initially was good until the hash rate started just doubling, and your yield getting cut in half and half and half. That's why initially it's going to be rough, right? So the people who did the best are the people who got the bigger guys early on. Theirs held on quite a bit longer. So kind of to each their own, different learning lessons there. It's up to you to decide there. But to me, again, the bigger, better miner is inevitable, right? Whether it's GoldShell themselves releasing it, or did find a little bit of news digging around on Antpool, which, in case you don't know, it's Bitmain's official pool, right? So all the algos they have are from every ASIC they have. They have the pool that kind of coincides with it. So when I was digging around looking for DR7 stuff, kind of waiting for them to officially list it, put it on here, I found something pretty interesting. Okay, so as we go through their listings, right, which is BTC, BCH, we can go through the list, but currently there's no Alephium. Okay, we go on miningpoolstats.stream, we go down the entire list here, there is no mention of Antpool. Okay, so what we found is in the help section, when again we're looking for SCP stuff, they have the Alph mining tutorial already on here. Okay, so they already have it going ahead of time, meaning that it is coming. So it's not something that's in the beginning stages, because again, this was 2 months ago that listed this. Okay, so as far as ASIC mining with Alph on Antpool, again, they're not building one for GoldShell miners. Okay, so again, nothing's confirmed, but all the signs are there. And then at WDMS, when they did the little keynote speech with the POW guys at the end, they kind of insinuated also that they're building miners for all the participants, which Alpha was one also. Okay, so again, they haven't officially confirmed, but all the signs are 100% there that it's coming, right? So to me, that's the biggest threat, and that's kind of what you're betting against. Okay, so like we had mentioned already, the hash rate has gone up immensely. When this thing came out, it was in the 400 terahash range. Currently, it's about 4x since then. Okay, partially what wrecked the AL box actually early on was that entity. Okay, remember on April 23rd, you can kind of see it here exactly to the day when Alephium, Radiant, and Kyla all got hit. It drastically affected the rewards. Okay, so you can see here pretty much from the beginning here to that, it doubled. So the rewards got cut in half already at that point and kind of got wrecked a little bit. So we know we can attribute this definitely to the entity. As far as beyond this, because it did just kind of flatline and it was essentially those guys kind of taking over. And then we can see how much it's increased since then. So we can kind of speculate the batch size based off of that, right? We can kind of speculate that pretty much since then we've gone from 750 and we've essentially doubled, right? For easy math purposes. So when we break it down, each AL box was 360 gigahash. If we do 2,000 units, it's about 720 terahash, which brings us to give or take ballparking around a 2,000 AL box one batch. Okay, so is it possible that we get another 2,000 for the two? Potentially, and if we get 2,000 units, again, easy math, oddly enough, it essentially doubles the network. So if they were to release another 2,000 of those units, just those units alone, it's going to double the hash rate again, meaning the yield is going to get cut in half again. Meaning it's going to make essentially what an AL box is currently yielding now. Okay, which is about 11 alpha a day. And alpha is currently about $1 a day, so about $11 a day. Okay, if that were to happen, again, that's pure speculation. The only thing we do know is that the hash rate will continue to go up, though. Okay, so that's one point there. Another point to me, and this is kind of the bigger threat, is again when that bigger ASIC comes on, doing easy math speculation. And this is not even to say that if a Bitmain unit were to come out, that it's going to be twice as efficient as this thing, right? We've seen that happen between like the Ice River and the Bitmain units. So there's that potential there, but just doing easy math here. What do we know about the big guys? Typically they're in the 3,000 to 3,700 watt range. This guy's 360 watts. So 10 of these could potentially equate to one of the big boy ASICs, bringing it to what? About 7.2 terahash, okay? Basing it off that metric alone, it's pretty insane, because if we do 7.2 terahash, right, if each unit theoretically would be that much, just 200 units would double the network from where it's currently. Okay, so you can kind of see the extent, and I highly doubt they're going to release a batch of 200 units, right? If they come out with that big boy, you could probably add a 0 to that. Okay, so multiplying that by 10 at that point. Okay, so you can kind of see the extent of what's going to happen once those bigger guy comes on, right? Just like we saw with Caspa going from 1 to it's currently like 400 petahash, okay, which is a 400x increase in the hash rate. Okay, so we're not going to see that here in the next few months, but over time, just expect that. But especially once we get these bigger units. Again, these are tiny units. We haven't even gotten like a 600 watt, 1200 watt like we saw with the Ice Rivers. These are just these little boxes. Okay, so to me, that's kind of the biggest threat. So you have to kind of see how much time you have to calculate how much you can get. Okay. So even looking at it from that perspective, we can do some ROI estimates based off of a perfect scenario to kind of see if this thing makes sense. And this is why, like, basing it off of that $7,000 price point, which is again doubling the current street price, makes it kind of a rough sell, right? So again, even just basic ROI estimates, it's currently yielding 23 a day, right? So let's say 23 a day. Let's say perfect scenario, there's no increase from here. You get the first one. This is your dream scenario, right? Which is, again, not realistic. But just so you can get an idea of how not a great deal this could potentially be, right? And this is, again, focusing on yield, because, again, the fiat profitability can vary, right? It's currently at $1. Who's to say that a month from now it goes back up to that $3, $4 range? Okay, so then obviously the fiat profitability is going to triple, quadruple. Okay, but for me, I'm not necessarily concerned with that. I'm concerned with the amount of yield that I'm getting. That's what I'm focused on. And that's how you ideally should view these things, right? And then base it off of your what you think it could potentially be in the bull market, and then that could be your calculation, okay? So basic calculation, again, currently this new guy would earn about 23 alpha a day. Let's multiply that by 30, right? So 30 days in a month on average, it'd be about 690. Okay, so currently ALF is what? About $1 per ALF. Okay, so currently if this thing does come in at 7K, if you were to just buy ALF direct, you would need 10 months of this thing being the only miner on currently, right? Like if you were to get an AL Box 2 currently, everything stays as is. You would need 10 months of no one else buying one, you being on there by your lonesome to be able to accrue $7,000 worth. Okay, so again, the 690 per month, 10 months, 6,900. We're estimating that it might be around 7,000, and currently ALF is $1 a day. So for $7,000, you could buy 7,000 ALF. Okay, so is that a very realistic scenario? Hell to the no, right? So like that's why for me at that price point, it's absolute no for me from my perspective, just based on value and whether I'll get my money back. So that doesn't mean you may not get your fiat value back, right? Because again, currently, like, yes, it looks bleak in terms of the yield value, but again, if ALF goes nuts these next few months just because the Bitmain announcement does come out and it goes back up to $4, then yes, that's going to quadruple. Okay, but again, I'm worried about the yield. What I get, how am I going to get more ALF? Buying it or buying this guy potentially? Okay, so that's kind of the value proposition when I'm looking at these ASICs. It's like, is there a possibility, and is there a good possibility that I'm going to get more by mining it versus buying it? And if it's not even remotely close, like to me, in my opinion, again, you being the only one having one, and this is kind of your best case scenario, being 10 months, not looking good. If it's at that $7,000 price point, again, if this thing is like 3,000, then could potentially be more worth it. Again, you have to factor in the hash rate and all that. Then at that point, maybe there's a factor there, right? Just because, again, I guess, right? But even then, it'd be a hard stretch. The other validity with the $3,000 price point is potentially the price of what the big boy ASIC could be. Okay. So again, pure speculation, but based off of the hype ASIC price points that have sold kind of better than others, right? Because we saw two price points with the Bitmain units, which were the more expensive units. Okay. We saw initially that 50K, 60K price point. It seems like it did not sell very well. Okay. Because Ice River was kind of pegging them. Where it did start selling is when the aggressive price points came, right? And initially, even with the initial ice rivers, we saw that 20 to 30K price point, people were taking the risk at that point, right? So that 30K price point seems to be obviously an extreme price, but seems to be a price point that people are okay with speculating on, as crazy as it sounds. Because even what happened recently, right? The KS5 Pro, a lot of people did jump in when that guy came out, and same thing, that was in that 30 to 35K price range, okay? So basing it off of that potential that maybe the GoldShell unit is in that price range and that maybe the Bitmain unit comes out is similar efficiency here, it does end up being somewhere between like 8 to 9 terahash, somewhere around there. Again, 10xing this, if it's in that 30, 35K price point, a tenth of that, because again, this is a tenth of that if we scale, brings us to that $3,000, $3,500 range, right? So realistically, $4,000, because again, you're going to pay the premium for having the smaller piece. So in that sense, that kind of adds a little more potential value to that price point. But again, doubling it, if it is that $7,000 range, and again, a big boy unit would be 10 of those, then you're kind of saying that the big boy ASIC is going to be 70K. Do you think it's really going to sell 70K? Going to be kind of a hard sell, right? So for me, if it's in that 3K price point, then maybe I'll dig in the numbers a little bit more. Do I think it's going to come in at that price? Hell no, right? Anything can happen. Anything is possible. I just don't see that being very likely from GoldShell, at least, right? Maybe from one of the competitors. Maybe Ice River comes in and wrecks them. Who knows? Realistically, as far as playing that game, the pricing game, Ice River was extremely good at that, so that's why I really am hoping that they do come into this space. They do release like a AL0 or something of that sort, because that would be much more appealing. Just because their price points are more on par with the market, right? And the fact that they used higher end chips and they scaled well with the bigger units, because that's the big thing, is that I know a lot of times it sounds like I'm dogging these like smaller at-home ASICs, and it's just because of the value, right? I needed to have value, like with the Ice River units. Different story, because a lot of those did scale with the big units that were efficient, right? So if this guy were to scale with a potential big guy, it could make sense. But again, when the AL Box 1 was at 15K, and then we know that the bigger version was going to be 20x of that, you're saying that the big unit is going to be 300,000. Like, it's the basic math has just seemed extreme. So that's why it didn't make any sense. So kind of basing it off of those things and looking at that front, maybe at 3K, the speculation front, it could play out. As just the downfall is that right now, at least for GoldShell, is kind of a crappy time, just because, again, freaking Alephium's price has been bottoming it out like crazy. But for us, though, this is a good thing, right? We do want to see releases at crappy times, because if we do see value, because again, it's very possible that we go back into this range, because again, just a few months ago, we were in the $2, $3 range. Okay, and not too long ago, we were in the $4 range. Okay, so I do fully see us returning there sometime between now and the next 6 months, potentially, right? And then in the bull market, this one does have the potential to do extremely well. Tiny market cap, gonna have big ASICs, a lot of things going on here, which is why Alephium is gonna be one of the ones I am DCing into heavily, especially if it continues in this price range. I did purchase a good chunk recently. I'm going to probably purchase another good chunk, just because this is going to be hopefully a pretty good one, and that's why I am interested in these ASICs. It's just the value has to be there, right? Especially right now, early on, it's high risk. Just like I mentioned in that first AL Box video, extremely high risk, extreme degen play, okay? Which, again, hopefully there has been lessons learned. People have seen what happened, what can happen, and what did happen. Okay, so you have to, again, when we do these things, I know a lot of times it seems like I'm pessimistic when I'm doing these estimations, You have to account for the worst case scenario, right? So when I'm looking at it, the risk to reward just has to be there. It can't be like, oh, well, it kind of looks like I might make my money back if I were to just buy the coin versus mining it. It's like, no, it has to be pretty confident that I'm going to get more yield by mining it versus buying it for me to jump in, right? So it's just different factors, different things. Is just, to me, it's extreme high risk with this guy just because, again, it's inevitable, right? I mean, it's essentially confirmed here. It's gonna happen. I would be shocked if we don't have any announcement of a bigger Alephium ASIC within the next like 3 to 5 months. I would be extremely shocked, okay? Especially if Alephium's price does have a turnaround. Do not be surprised to see if the whole market recovers, you see a mysterious pump with Alephium kind of pumping more so than the others. Don't be surprised to see the ASIC announcement shortly after that. Or don't be surprised to see if we do go back up to $2 or $3 range to see the announcement then. Because then obviously from the manufacturer perspective, they're going to be able to sell that thing for a whole lot more, right? Because it's going to look a lot more attractive. So because they're releasing currently with the Alephium's price where it's at right now and people being so focused on like fiat profitability, for us as the consumer, this is our best chance of maybe getting a good buy from GoldShell, right? Not in general, because I think if Ice River comes out with one, again, they're very aggressive with the price. That's who I'm kind of more hoping that they get into the game. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe they just run Caspa to the end and that just becomes a whole thing. But hopefully, I do hope they pivot. That would be very bullish. Or hopefully GoldShell just does something a little bit more reasonable. Right, that's also a possibility, right? We've seen these aggressive price cuts. We've been bitching at them, and it seems like some of it's been working. Right? Again, it's not a dig at GoldShell. It's just these practices, right? We don't want to see people get screwed over, just like we saw when people bought these freaking $15,000 AL boxes, right? So don't even get started on that. I'm trying to like stray away from that whole topic, but I keep almost veering into it. Let me try to stay on task, but. Overall, as a whole value, again, for me, realistic street price is probably going to be 7K, maybe 6K. A price for me to consider, it's got to be under like 3,900. It's got to be like 3,500, 3,000. Just basing it off of the metrics of the potential when this big unit comes out, because it's going to most likely scale. It's going to be the same type chips. So if they were to release a professional miner, it'll be in that realm. Chances are, if there is an Ice River equivalent, it could be on the same kind of gen chips, but who knows? Maybe these are older chips and Ice River, when they come out, is twice the efficiency, or vice versa with Bitmain. Like, just factor those kinds of things in, right? Don't just base it solely off of that either. Okay, so that's kind of the hard part, is that it's very easy to get wrecked if it's not latest and greatest, right? So yes, this is the newest. That doesn't mean it's on the latest gen hardware, right? Which typically Bitmain tends to be more on it. Ice River has shown us that they were pretty on it, at least early on. So I would have more faith there, right? Just based off of what's happened previously. Okay, so we'll see what ends up happening. I'm going to be very curious because this will give us an idea if they're starting to pivot, right? GoldShell, we've been kind of bagging on them the past few months. And again, it's just because we want them to get better. Okay, it's not because we're out of spite or anything. It's just we don't want people to get screwed over. We want the competition. We do want GoldShell to succeed because, again, we want this competition because it's better for all of us. Okay, but we need to have better selling practices from these manufacturers, right? It's a two-way street too, though. Like, I'm realistically shouldn't be putting all the blame on them either, because at the end of the day, they can price at whatever the hell they want. It's up to you as the consumer to do the research, to look at different things, look at projections, more so than on mine the ASIC, and understand what you're getting yourself into. That's why I'm such a big proponent for research, understand that algo, emissions, tokenomics, everything. Like, understand what you're getting yourself into so you fully understand the dynamics of what I'm talking about even before having somebody explain it to you. Okay, that way you kind of know what happens and you see the value there, and the reason, even though we don't have the MSRP, why we speculate on it. As we've already seen, sometimes these things go up for sale and you have like an hour or two to make up a decision whether you think that price is going to be worth it or not, right? So that way, at this point, I have an idea. If it's anything over 3-4K, it's an absolute hell to the no. If it's $29.99, probably take the little risk for it, but I highly doubt it's going to be in that range, right? So just make sure you factor in all these things, take these things into consideration. Again, you have to see what you value more, whether it's the yield or the fiat profitability, because again, it's very likely that Alpha is going to have a good bull market. Hopefully, maybe not. Maybe they rug us. I kind of doubt that, though. They're on one of my top lists for doing well. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, guys. Do you guys see value here? I know some of you guys, unfortunately, even after watching my video, did purchase anyway. Sorry, bros, right? I'm doing my best to try to make sure you guys don't get screwed over, but unfortunately, people still do, and people go for it, and even though it doesn't make any sense for whatever reason, but it is what it is, guys. But let me know, do you guys see value here? Are you guys excited, or are you guys more excited to see what other manufacturers come out with? It's kind of what I'm waiting for, because as soon as we see other manufacturers come in, we can kind of see where GoldShell's efficiency lies. Like, is it way off base? Is it pretty close? And that's going to give us more idea as far as like long-term value goes, because again, that's more where I'm looking at currently, right? So let me know in the comments, guys, what you guys think. Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching, and I am out.